In the Oval Office, October 2025, President Trump greeted Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney with a familiar provocative jest, the idea of merging Canada and the US. It was a moment heavy with symbolism, as the two leaders met under the watchful eyes of aides and cameras, every gesture scrutinized for meaning. The handshake was stiff, the smiles thin, and the air charged with anticipation. Trump's offhand remark, delivered with his trademark bravado, was more than just a joke. It was a signal, a reminder of the power dynamics at play. The joke landed flat, highlighting the power imbalance and setting a tense tone. Carney, new to the role but seasoned in global finance, recognized the challenge immediately. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see how he would respond. Carney's response was swift and firm. "That's not where I was going," he said, steering the conversation back to business. His words were measured, but his tone left no doubt. Canada would not be bullied or belittled, not even in jest. The exchange underscored the delicate dance of US-Canada relations, Trump's disruptive style versus Carney's defense of Canadian sovereignty. Each leader represented not just their own interests, but the hopes and anxieties of millions back home. Despite polite words, the underlying tension was unmistakable. Every sentence was weighed, every glance calculated. The stakes were high, with trade, security, and national pride all on the line. Trump's repeated 51st state comments have become a symbol of a more aggressive American posture, stoking Canadian sensitivities. For some, it was a negotiating tactic. For others, a provocation that risked unraveling decades of careful diplomacy. For Canadians, these remarks cut to the core of national identity. The idea of being subsumed, even in jest, touched a nerve, reminding many of the long history of asserting independence from their powerful neighbor. The Oval Office meeting, meant to restart trade talks, instead exposed the deep rift now defining the partnership. What was supposed to be a fresh start quickly became a test of wills, with both sides digging in. The smiles for the cameras couldn't mask the fundamental disconnect. Behind the scenes, advisors whispered urgently, aware that every word could shape the future of the relationship. The path to reconciliation would be anything but easy. With old wounds reopened and new challenges ahead, both nations faced a long, uncertain road, one that would demand patience, resilience, and a willingness to find common ground, even when the odds seemed stacked against them. The diplomatic chill is rooted in a fierce economic conflict. Trump's administration imposed sweeping tariffs, 35% on most Canadian goods, 50% on metals, 25% on vehicles, disrupting decades-old supply chains. In response, Canadians launched a grassroots boycott of U.S. products and travel, signaling public outrage. The USMCA shields most trade, but key sectors like steel and autos are suffering, creating a two-tiered system and deepening the divide. The economic standoff now plays out in factories, mills, and everyday choices, escalating the rift between the two nations. The economic and political clashes between Canada and the United States have reached a boiling point. These tensions have shattered Canadian trust in the U.S., creating a rift that seems to widen with each passing day. A recent poll shows that 60% of Canadians no longer see America as a reliable partner, a stark contrast to the past when the two nations were seen as inseparable allies. The America First approach and tariffs imposed on national security grounds have fueled a deep sense of betrayal among Canadians. In response, Canadians are rallying around national pride, supporting Buy Canadian campaigns, and boycotting American tourism and products. Prime Minister Carney faces intense pressure from all sides. Any concession to the U.S. is scrutinized by a wary and increasingly skeptical public. Meanwhile, most Americans remain distracted by domestic issues, with Trump's base staunchly supporting his tough stance on trade and foreign policy. This asymmetry, an engaged, wounded Canadian public versus an indifferent American one, makes reconciliation even harder to achieve. The emotional and political chasm between the two nations is wide and growing wider. Trust, once the bedrock of the alliance, is now in short supply, replaced by suspicion and doubt. Repairing this fractured relationship will be a monumental challenge, requiring effort, understanding, and a willingness to rebuild what has been lost. Under pressure, Carney's government has made bold concessions to de-escalate the trade war. Canada scrapped its digital services tax and dropped most retaliatory tariffs, hoping to prompt U.S. reciprocity. Ottawa even withdrew key WTO disputes over softwood lumber. prioritizing immediate negotiation over long-term legal battles. These moves aim to show Canada as the reasonable party and isolate Trump's hardliners. But at home, critics accuse Carney of capitulation, demanding firmer resistance. Each concession risks being seen as weakness, fueling political opposition. Carney must prove these retreats are strategic, not surrender. The stakes: Canada's economic future and political stability. Carney faces a political storm at home as he tries to end the tariff crisis. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre attacks every concession as weakness, while business leaders warn of job losses and demand protection. The public, proud but hurting, wants both strength and results. Communities dependent on U.S. trade are feeling the pain firsthand. Carney must balance defending sovereignty with delivering economic relief. Every move is a gamble: too soft, and he's accused of surrender; too tough, and the crisis deepens. His leadership is on the line. The margin for error is razor thin. The outcome will define his legacy. Trump's 51st state remarks are just the latest in a long history of US-Canada friction. Even as a joke, they strike at Canada's core anxieties about sovereignty. This theme has surfaced repeatedly, fueling a sense of déjà vu and complicating progress. Carney's predecessor Trudeau also struggled with these provocations, which contributed to his political downfall. Trump's rhetoric is deliberate, reinforcing a worldview of dominance over partnership. Each incident reopens old wounds, forcing Canadian leaders into a defensive posture. The cycle erodes trust and political capital, making real engagement harder. In 2025, the past is not just history, it's an ever-present obstacle at the negotiating table. The road to repairing US-Canada relations is steep and uncertain. Years of close cooperation have given way to tension and mistrust, leaving both nations at a crossroads. The border, once a symbol of friendship, now feels like a line of division, and the stakes for both countries have never been higher. Washington is linking trade to security, demanding more from Ottawa while threatening to isolate it in USMCA talks. The pressure is mounting, with American officials insisting on stricter enforcement and new concessions. For Canadian businesses and workers, the uncertainty is palpable, as every negotiation round brings new risks and challenges. The economic consequences of a breakdown would ripple far beyond the border, affecting jobs, investment, and the daily lives of millions. Both sides know that failure is not an option, but trust must be rebuilt step by step. Progress requires the U.S. to suspend tariffs and shift to a tone of respect, treating Canada as an equal partner. Only through genuine dialogue and mutual understanding can the two countries move forward. Diplomatic gestures and public commitments are important, but so is a willingness to listen and compromise. Carney must secure a deal that protects Canadian interests without appearing to capitulate. The challenge is to balance national pride with practical solutions, ensuring that Canada's voice is heard and respected at the negotiating table. Creative solutions and clear communication with the public are essential. Leaders must explain the stakes honestly, building public support for compromise while defending core values. Open forums and transparent updates can help bridge the gap between government actions and public expectations. Both nations must recognize their shared interests outweigh current disputes. The deep cultural, economic, and personal ties that bind Americans and Canadians together are far stronger than any temporary disagreement. Mending the alliance demands leadership, vision, and a recommitment to partnership. It calls for courage to admit past mistakes and the wisdom to chart a new course together. The cost of failure is not just economic, it's the unraveling of one of the world's most successful alliances. The future depends on the choices made today, and on the willingness of both nations to heal, rebuild, and move forward as true partners.